Hi everyone, I'm Orlandini. I'm a product designer and a 3D artist, and today we're gonna see how to create this amazing Apple-like product image with Blender. Let's get started. So, the first thing we're gonna need is to create a new general file, so let's create one. Here we are. The next thing, we're gonna delete our default cube. Now we need to import our FBX model of our Apple Watch. I'm gonna leave you in the description a link to download all the stuff that you're gonna need to follow this tutorial. So let's go to File, Import, FBX, and let's add our Apple Watch model. Here we are. So now we're gonna change our render engine into Cycle. Let's get to Experimental, GPU Compute. Let's add a denoiser. If you have a RTX graphic card, you can choose OptiX as denoiser. Otherwise, it will work fine anyway. So now we're gonna need to create a new vertical split so we can see what camera sees. Let's click on these to hide all the stuff. Next, we're gonna need to position our camera, so let's get everything to 0 in the location. Let's get to 90 degree and 0. So perfect. Now we can move away our camera. We're gonna change our focal length to 135. That will work fine with a small product. Here we are. So the next thing we're gonna need is to rotate our product by 90 degree. Here we are. So as you can see, now we have some materials on our object because FBX files import materials when imported. But we don't need this, so let's delete all the materials that we have on our product. This model is made in Fusion 360, so it's not perfect for Blender type of modeling, but for our purposes will works just fine. So now we're gonna need to create all the materials for our model, but before doing that, we're gonna need to set all the materials by apply the scale. This menu can pop out by clicking on Ctrl A, and we're gonna apply the scale of all the model. This will helps us later. So let's go by creating the new material. We're gonna create the strap lug material orange, because spoiler, this will be orange, and we can change to shading. Here we are. So the next thing we're gonna need is to change our base color to an orangish color. Let's choose what you think works fine. If you want to follow exactly the material, the hex code is this. Copy that. So the next thing we're gonna need is to go to Edit. If you don't have this, we need to activate the Node Wrangler, so go to Add-ons, search for Node Wrangler, and activate it by checking it. So now let's create a Voronoi texture. Let's click Ctrl T to get our texture coordinates. Then we're gonna need to add a color ramp and a bump node that will bump our texture into the normal map. So let's get color into 8 and color into the factor. And as you can see, we can start to see something on our surface. So the next thing we're gonna need is to get up with our scale. I think that for our purposes 80 will work fine. No, we can go 150 or 230. Even more, we can go like 400. Perfect. So the next thing we're gonna need is to change the position of our colors in the color ramp. So let's change it to 1.25 and the white to 0.35. Perfect. So let's get down with the strength of the texture. Just perfect. The next thing we're gonna need is to get up a little with the roughness. I think 0.85 will work fine. Perfect. So the next thing we're gonna need is to get this material on the other strap lug. So let's click on it, then shift click on our strap lug. We've already applied the material, and click on copy material to select it. So perfect. The next thing we're gonna need is to create the metal aluminum material. So let's click on our case, go to new, metal, then we can change the color to gray, then add a noise texture this time. Always click on Ctrl T to get our texture coordinates, then get a color ramp and drag the factor into the factor and the color into the roughness. Perfect. The next thing we're gonna need is to bump up the metallic all the way to 1, and as you can see now, we start to see something. As you can see, if we go like 500, we're gonna get a perfect aluminum look. So perfect. Now the next thing we're gonna need is to get a little bit more light gray. Perfect. So let's copy this material to all the other parts of metal. So let's click, as we mentioned before, on all the metal materials, and by clicking on these, clicking copy material to select it, we have all set it. So now the next thing we're gonna need is to get this red material of this ring. So let's create a new material, red ring, change the base color to a reddish color, then bump all the way to 1 the roughness, add a little bit of metallic, and here we are. The next material we're gonna create is the screen material. This is the most interesting for this product. So let's click on our screen, click on the glass, and a little trick that we can do here is to duplicate this screen, scale it down just a little bit, and we're gonna call it screen, So now we can hide our glass and start work on the screen material. So let's create a new material, call it screen sport, because this will display the sport screen of the Apple Watch. So let's import the image texture by dragging it inside of our shader. Then we're going to need to click on Ctrl T. Let's get the UV map into the vector, and let's drag the color into the base color. As you can see now, something wrong happened, but we're gonna fix it now. So there are many ways to adjust UV maps on a model, but as I mentioned before, this is a model made in Fusion 360, so it's not perfect for UV mapping, but with this little trick it will be extremely easy for you to do it. So let's click Tab, let's go to UV, pay attention to be exactly facing the screen, select all with A, and go to Project from View under UV menu. So here we are. Now we're gonna need to go into the UV editing, and let's go to modify it. So we're gonna scale it up, we're gonna fix it perfectly in the center, and when we are fine without texture like this, we're gonna get a perfect screen. So the next thing we're gonna need is to light up the screen, because like this feels like a printed one. So let's drag the color into the emission, and let's bring the emission strength to like 6. So now, as you can see, the screen gets light from itself. So another thing that we can do is to get a little down with the specular, just to get a perfect dark color. Then the next thing we're gonna need is to reactivate our glass, and let's create a material. Let's create a material for our glass. So let's call it glass. Then we're gonna need to do something a little different from before. So let's create a light path. Let's get a math node, set it to add as default. So let's go to shadow ray and diffuse ray into the add. Then add a mix shader. Then we can delete our principal shader. Let's create a glass BSDF and a transparent BSDF. Then we're gonna need to drag this into the shader, grab the factor into the factor, and the shader into the shader. The shader into the surface, sorry. So let's bring this to 0.1 and our IR to like 1.2. Okay, so now we get our glass. The next thing we're gonna need is to set up our light. Let's get started. Let's go to layout. Let's add our first light. That will be an area light. Let's rotate it, drag it like this, this. As you can see here, we can see what we are doing in our scene. The next thing we're gonna need is to change our color all the way to black. Then we're gonna need this light to be like 400, very strong. I'm gonna need it light from the side. Then we're gonna change it later if we want. The next light we're gonna need is another light from the other way. That's more like 100. As you can see now, we start to get some reflection. And the third light, like here, on the left front of the model, something like this, and scale it down to like 40 of power. So now we start to see something on our screen. The next thing we're gonna need is to select all the hierarchy, click on M, bring it to a new collection called Apple Watch. Apple Watch. Then duplicate it, so duplicate collection. Then drag it up. Here we are. So now we have two different Apple Watches. And let's change the materials that we need to change on it. So let's duplicate, for example, our strap lag material. Let's duplicate it, call it white, and just change our base color all the way to white. So let's go to the hex, write 6 times F, so FF. Perfect. Copy this material on the other strap lag. And then the next part we're gonna need is to change our screen from the sport screen to the clock screen. So let's duplicate it, call it screen clock. Let's go into the shading. Let's search for our clock texture, open it, and as you can see, here we are with our perfect new screen. Let's now start by creating our scene. You can do what you want with this type of rendering, just choose what works fine with you. I think that we need our camera to be a little bit more near our products. So for me, this will be just fine. So now we have all of our scene. One thing that I noticed while working on the render is that our bump texture is too thick, so we have to drag it down a little bit. So let's bump up the scale to 600 just to get something a little bit less strong, and let's decrease also the strength of our bump node, something like this. Also change it to the white, so I've copied all the stuff from before and applied now. So let's get applied like this. Let's get this to the double the size and double the size, and we're gonna get and we're gonna get the epsilon near a little bit, and we're gonna hit render.
One eternity later.
So now that we have our render finished, we can go with the last part of the tutorial. So we're gonna need to go on the compositing. Let's get use node, and we're gonna need to add a glare just to pop out our fog glow. So let's get to high, and let's change the threshold to 14. The next thing we're gonna need is a little lens distortion that will help us to get a more realistic and Apple-like product render. So let's get the distortion to 0.03, and we can see the result here. So here we are with our final render. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like down below, and if you have any questions or if you want to see more of these, leave a comment below, and if you want to see more in the future, subscribe to the channel. Bye bye!